My Little Dashie, Part 3. It's been 3 days since Dashie left. The night of her departure, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went for a walk. I wasn't sure where I was going or how long I had walked, but that's what I did. I walked. Now, 3 days later, I'm finding myself out here walking once again. I've been out here for roughly 3 hours, and though it's only 5 in the afternoon, it's grown dark. A storm is brewing, and soon I'll be hit by the brunt of it. I turn around and begin my walk home, though I don't rush. My energy these past few days has been non-existent. I've barely eaten anything more than some toast. I feel so lost as I walk through the woods that surround my house. No. Our house. It's as much hers as it is mine, and nothing will change that. The rain has begun, but I don't quicken my pace. I just walk, much like I had done so long ago. The distant memories of all my pain and sorrow before Dashie began to seep back into my mind. I haven't had these thoughts in years. The pats of water on the tree leaves help keep me distracted. It's a peaceful sound, one you would never hear in the city. The rain's picking up as my shirt is now soaking wet. I'm sure I'll be sick tomorrow morning, but I don't care. I've been sick for 3 days now, mental illness that's been tearing me apart. My daughter is somewhere out here hurting, needing some comfort and warmth in this rain. I wish I could be there for her, even though she may not want me to. She may not ever want to see me again for how she acted. I don't blame her. It must be such a horrible thing finding out your past like that. I can't even imagine what it would be like. I know Dashie is a strong mare and she can pull through, but I also know she holds a grudge at times. I'm not sure that even if she did come back, she would ever forgive me, or more importantly, if I could even forgive myself. It's now pouring out here. The tree canopies are barely holding back the torrential rain as I'm hammered by the water droplets. I stop and look around and find my bearings and return home. I'm not lost. Most of this area is easy to traverse once you get used to it. It's just, I'm also looking for Dashie as I walk. It's the reason why I'm walking in the forest in the first place. I press on, keeping a steady pace through this rain. Suddenly, I spy a large, thick tree. Its stature sticks out amongst the rest, and from looking at the barely wet grass underneath, I can tell it has many branches that are holding back even this hard rain. I need to take a break, so I walk under the tree and sit down. And the grass is barely wet, with only a few small droplets making their ways down. This is the kind of tree I'd imagine Dashie would hide under in this rain. I wish it to be true, but I saw no sign of her as I approached. I close my eyes and lean against the tree hulk as I think about my life. Our life, together as a father and daughter. We've grown so much as a family and have been fortunate enough to have very few fights. None of them were as heartbreaking as the one 3 days ago. I feel a tear run down my cheeks as I imagine Dashie's face again. The anger in her eyes mixed with the confusion just tears me apart. I want so badly to make things right or go back in time and stop it from happening. But I can't do either of those. What's done is done. I'm so sorry. I speak out loud, not caring for if anyone's listening. I'm alone in these woods, besides the wildlife. In this rain, they're hiding as well, and the ones that aren't are far from being such as I. I'm so sorry, Dashie. I continue to cry as I keep my eyes closed and lean against the tree trunk. The rain continues to pour down around me. An occasional drop hits my head, but I don't care. Crack. I open my eyes from the sudden sound and look to my left. I'm shocked at what I see before me. looking at me with teary eyes herself. Dashie, my little Dashie, covered in burrs and tree sap along her mane and tail, was standing a couple feet from me. She's wet with both rain and tears. I hadn't heard her approach. Then again, being a Pegasus, she was very quiet and light on her hoofs. She doesn't speak, and instead just walks over to me, not caring what noises she makes under her hoofs. I don't move. I just sit on the ground and watch with my own wet eyes. She looked so horrible and yet so beautiful at the same time. Her coat would need a good cleaning, but that was the least of my worries. Without a word, she sits next to me, not making eye contact as she looks off into the woods. I can only look at her, wishing to hug her tightly and never let go again, but I hold back knowing that it would be too sudden. Finally, she's the first to speak.
I heard you.
Her voice got quiet as she whispers.
And I'm sorry, too.
I simply smiled through my tears. Her stubborn attitude was still showing as she always had difficulties apologizing. Dashie, you have nothing to be sorry about. It's my fault, simple as that. It seems my point doesn't get across. She finally looks at me with a sorrowful face.
Dad, do you still love me?
Now's the time to act. I reach over and grab her, holding her in a tight hug. Of course I do, Dashie. I've always loved you. I still love you no matter what. Not even a small fight like ours could ever change that. She returns the hug as we sit down and cry together. We continue to apologize, me for the truth and her for raising her voice and storming out. After some time, the rain subsides while we remain under the tree.
Dad?
Yeah?
Can we go home now? I need a shower bad.
I let out a light chuckle and she laughs too. We make our trip back home. She's smiling again. I am too. I've been giving it some thought lately, and I think I'm going to give her her birthday present a little early. A ticket to the Indy 500. Yeah, I'm taking her to the Indy 500. I mean, she can simply sit on some clouds and watch while I'm in the stands. I didn't even have to get her a ticket, but she needs some sort of reminder of her visit. I'm sure she'll have a blast, and though I don't expect this to make everything right, I can only hope it cheers her up some. With some time, I'm sure she'll relax and settle down about her being in the cartoon. I mean, she's a smart mare, and she knows she's real, not that made-up pony from the cartoon. I can only help push her to believing that and hope that she does the same to me. There's a point in every parent's life when they have to let their child go, whether it be for the better or for the worst. It must happen at some point. I now sit here in my living room by myself, sulking over the photographs of my distant memories of me and Dashie. On her 20th birthday, I had planned a special outing to go see a flight show. As we prepared to leave, there was a knocking on the door. Never in the years we have lived here had anybody knocked at the door. Hell, we hadn't even made arrangements if someone did show up. I simply told her to go to her room while I took care of it. Once I heard the door shut calmly and collectively, I asked who it was knocking, expecting some stranger, possibly lost on his or her travels. A female voice spoke in such an elegant yet attention-grabbing tone I felt myself listening to her with the uttermost attention. She asked if she may come in, a question I'd normally refuse with a heartbeat, yet something about her voice was reminiscent. I couldn't help but walk over and open the door. When I first saw the figure standing on my porch, I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or hallucinating. Standing there was the radiant and majestic Princess Celestia. I was at a loss for words, fighting both emotions of brony excitement, which I had only felt when I first found Dashie, and emotions of sorrow for what I knew this meant. She stood there another second looking at me. We matched each other in eye level, her body being the size of a nearly full-grown horse. I stepped back and allowed her to enter. What caught me off guard next was the 5 other ponies that followed suit. First Twilight Sparkle, then the rest of the gang. Applejack, Rarity, Fluttershy, and lastly, Pinkie Pie.
Ooh, so this is what an alien house looks like on the inside. Oh my, you have a kitchen! I'm starving. Are you starving? I can make us some...
She was stopped by Applejack's oof. Easy there, Sugar Cube. We're just here for Rainbow, so we ain't got no time for any eating. Applejack's stomach growled. No matter how hungry we are. I still wasn't sure how to completely react to all this, but not wanting to be rude, I offered some leftovers. We have some leftovers from dinner last night. You're more than welcome to some. Pinkie took that as an okay and ran into the kitchen with much vigor. It seemed I did not even need to tell her where anything was. She instantly knew where everything was placed. Factor it to either dumb luck or simply being Pinkie. I chose the latter. I'll go keep an eye on her, Applejack said, walking to join the hyper pony. As she passed, she tipped her hat to me. I was finding it odd the ponies were not more hesitant around a creature such as me. Then again, the same could be same for myself, but having Dashie for 15 years, I grew used to having such a thing around me. Now I have 5 other ponies and a full-sized goddess horse looking at me with the same amount of curiosity that I held for them. There was a moment of silence as I watched the 2 mares enter my kitchen and begin to rummage through my fridge. I'm quite surprised, Celestia began. I'd expected a little more resistance to us entering. Why? I know who you all are. Celestia nodded. Ah, so you do know them then? That you're fictional characters from a children's TV show? Then yes. Otherwise, why you're here, I have no idea. The last part I lied, hoping to keep my mind at ease. I knew the reason, but I wanted to ignore it. Oh, I think you do know. My heart fell into the pits of my stomach. I did know, and she was straight to the point about it. During all these years, I had anticipated this moment, but as time drug on, that thought slowly dispelled until it was just nothing more than a minor nip in my mind. Then it always happens, you know. When everything is finally perfect and you don't have to worry anymore.
Excuse me, sir,
Twilight began.
but from what we could figure out, Rainbow Dash should be here. Is she?
I looked to the purple mare. I wanted to tell her no, but I knew it was fruitless. She's upstairs in her room.
In her room?
Rarity asked, surprised. Yeah, Dashie's in her room. I wasn't sure who was knocking and didn't want her to be spotted.
Dashie? My, you're that friendly with her already?
Rarity continued. I wanted to punch that pony so hard right then. How she responded insulted me. Friendly? That's not even the beginning of it. And I should be asking you ponies as to what the hell you did. Celestia raised an eyebrow, taken back by my change of tone.
You see, my student...
I know who she is. Get to the chase. I was very short with her. As furious as I was, I wanted to know why they'd send Dashie as a filly to some other world. Twilight bit her lip as her teacher continued.
Yes, of course. She was working on a spell to help the weather team with some storm development. Well, they made slightly too large of a storm, and then Twilight used her magic to try and dispel it. It shot a lightning bolt meeting her magic. Rainbow Dash was unfortunate enough to be within reach of the blast, and it engulfed her and sent her to, well, here. So, we are here to retrieve her. Simple enough, I'd imagine. Before I could answer, Dashie called from her bedroom. Dad, is everything all right?
That second, my heart stopped beating as I looked from pony to pony. Each one's face was in pure shock and confusion. They recognized the voice of their Rainbow Dash, but she said Dad.
Excuse me, Sugar Cube, Applejack started, returning from the kitchen. Did I just hear Rainbow Dash call y'all Dad?
Before I could answer, Celestia started up again.
Do you care to explain?
I was lost. So many things were running through my mind at once. There was only one thing I could do, and I had to do it, but I knew I wouldn't like it. Go into the living rooms and make yourself comfortable. I'll be right down with her. I didn't allow a response. I turned around and walked up the stairs slowly.
Dad? Yeah, Dashie, I'm coming up. I
looked back down at the group of ponies as they watched me ascend. We need to talk. So that's what I did. I told her who was down there and that they were there to take her back. She had seen the cartoon every so often after some time and found the wacky adventures entertaining. She had given up any thought that the Rainbow Dash in the show was her and only viewed it as another cartoon. As I talked to her and explained that those very ponies she didn't believe in were downstairs, she brushed me off with some laughs. She didn't believe me and thought I was playing some joke on her. So I took her down into the living room.
Dashie!
Pinkie shouted, jumping onto her Cayenne friend. Dashie was quick to shove the pink pony off.
Hey, get away from me!
She was taken back by the sudden amount of ponies filling our living room. They all looked at her with worried expressions as to why she shoved her closest friend away. Pinkie's cotton candy mane went straight as she looked in confusion.
You don't recognize me, do you?
No, or any of you,
Dashie continued. It hurt me in so many ways. I knew these were her friends, but so many things have happened differently that she didn't know the truth fully. And neither did they. So I had to explain to them. I started. Dashie, take a seat, please, so I can talk to them. She did just that in her recliner. The entire time she looked at all the ponies who occupied the couches and sent a rug in front of the fireplace. It was time, but first I had to start with a question. How long ago was she sent over here? The question caught them off guard, but Twilight cleared her throat as she spoke.
About 15 days ago. Why?
I was speechless. 15 days ago? Shit, she's been with me for 15 years. That means a day in their world meant a year here. Well, I continued, it's been a lot more time than that here.
How long?
Twilight asked. 15 years. All the ponies besides Celestia had their mouths agape.
That don't explain why she don't know us,
Applejack said. Well, that's the thing. When I found her, she was a filly.
Come again?
From my math, I think she was no older than 4 or 5 years old. Now Celestia looked surprised.
You mean to tell us that you have been taking care of Rainbow Dash for 15 years, since she was a small filly?
She asked. I simply nodded and looked over to Dashie, who wore an expressionless look on her face. She's... I started, but I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. I know it's not true. God, I wish it was, but...
I understand. The dad now makes sense.
Celestia cut me off, holding a stern look about her face. She was thinking, trying to piece together in her mind what had possibly happened. I chalked it up to the magic being unstable, possibly reverted her in age. For a few moments it was quiet. besides the breathing of 7 ponies and myself. Finally, it was Dashie who broke the silence.
So, what's supposed to happen now?
I looked to the princess, trying to read her face. No matter how good I had gotten at reading Dashie's face, Princess Celestia had the best poker face I'd ever seen. I had no clue what she was thinking or feeling at this moment.
Well, it's quite simple. Twilight?
Celestia looked to her pupil, who instantly perked up hearing her name.
Do you still remember that memory spell from the Discord incident?
Twilight simply nodded as she stood from the couch and hopped onto the floor. I knew what was going on, what Celestia had in mind. She wanted Twilight to either erase her memories and start from anew, or possibly, I hope she just simply wanted to give Dashie her memories of their friendships and time in Ponyville. I wasn't sure what to do. I felt it was right. I knew it was right and needed to be done. I had been telling myself that for 15 years as I waited for this moment. But there was something I needed to say before it happened. These ponies were going to take my Dashie away, and I had some words to speak before that could happen. No! Wait, please. I started. Twilight stopped and looked at the sun goddess. Just give me a moment with her, please. All I ask. Since this is the last time we'll see each other. I had given up holding back my tears at this point and was openly crying. The ponies could tell I was hurting, and Dashie didn't look to be faring too well either. Figuring it wasn't good to prolong the inevitable, I walked over to the chair Dashie sat in, knelt down to meet her eye level as I spoke. Dashie. My little Dashie. I love you with all my heart. You have done wonders to open me up from the man I once was. I had to pause a moment to settle down. You have brought me so much joy in my life that I can't possibly ever thank you for. At this point, Dashie too began to cry. That only made it worse for me. These 15 years we've had together, talking, playing, flying, all those have been so special to me. I just want you to know that I will forever love you. It doesn't matter if we are biologically related or of different worlds. I don't care what you may ever think of me, or even if you don't remember me. But right now, you being my little Dashie, I want you. I poked her chest to physically show I was talking to her. I want you to know that fact. If there's ever a problem that happens and you need me, don't hesitate to find a way to get me, okay? I tried to laugh, passing the last part off as a joke. It worked, though, only slightly, as we both continued to cry. I could also hear some sniffling from behind me. I could only picture Pinkie Pie crying much like she had at the end of the second episode in Season 1 after Luna and Celestia had been reunited.
Dad! Do I have to go, Daddy? Do I have to go?
It had been a few years since she had actually called me Daddy. Most of the time it was simply Dad or Pops. It felt good knowing she still cared for me enough to call me Daddy, much like she had the first times so many years ago. I simply nodded my head and stood up.
Before I could grasp my balance, she jumped onto me and hugged me tight. I could feel her tears on the back of my neck, and I returned the embrace. It's your actual home, Dashie. You don't belong here. You need to go back to where you belong.
I belong here with you!
It hurt so much to say, but I had to keep her convinced that this was the right thing to do. No, you don't. You're limited here. You're only able to fly around the house. You have no friends or other ponies to relate to. I was only taking care of you until this time would come, but I never thought it would be this painful. I remained quiet for a few more minutes as we held each other tight. She didn't fight back or want to resist what was happening, which told me she knew what must be done.
I love you, Daddy.
And I love you too, my little Dashie. We separated as she lowered herself to the ground. At this point, all the other ponies had tears flowing, even the goddess herself. She had seemed quite smug about knowing what had happened, the time difference and such, but it was evidence that the age difference was a shock. She most likely had expected to find a 35-year-old Rainbow Dash, but instead found my 20-year-old Dashie. Twilight stepped closer to Rainbow Dash, sniffling once before her horn glowed. I knew it was coming. It hurt so much, but I knew it was right. It was what had to happen for her friends, and in a twisted way for me. Now I could know she was actually going home and would be around her friends and could fly wherever and whenever she wanted to without limitations. She could enjoy her friends' company once more.
Wait!
I looked from the floor to Dashie's. She backed away from Twilight.
Before I go, I want to get something.
Before any pony or myself could protest, she flew up to her room. She was quick and returned with a shoebox in front of her hooves. I wasn't sure if she would be allowed to take anything back with her, and have expected the princess to protest. But she remained quiet, allowing Dashie to quickly write down something on a piece of paper and set it on the coffee table. She looked back to me, still crying but with a smile on her face. I knew she had realized this was how it must end, and knew that I knew that as well. The box, from my guessing, was probably her most cherished items that she kept for if she had to leave. Though it hurt me thinking about it, I hope she had a picture of us. Then again, I also hoped not. I didn't want her to be forced to remember my world anyway, and that hurt me just as much as everything else.
I'm sorry, Rainbow Dash.
Twilight started.
I honestly wish there was another way to do this. I wish I didn't have to do this, but... Can't...
Dashie started.
Can't he come with me?
The stuttering in her voice told me she was simply speaking her mind, not actually asking a question. Twilight shook her head, unable to keep eye contact with her friend as she cried before her.
Rainbow Dash,
Princess Celestia started.
He cannot join you in our world, much like how you cannot stay in his. This was all never meant to be, and the world around us was not made to house you. And yet...
Celestia looked to me, smiling, then began to look around our living room. All the photos of us together, all her knickknacks and belongings strewn around the room.
And yet, something beautiful happened here.
something I cannot explain in full. When I realized where you ended up, I expected the worst. I figured you to be ruined, tainted and tarnished from this world's cruelty. But now, I see that it's quite the opposite. That here, this man that has raised you, shows me that you were in good hooves. Or hands, as it were. Dashie sniffed once, beginning to calm down as Celestia's words sunk in. Celestia returned to looking at me, still smiling. I cannot speak for you, but from what I see in front of me, the amount of love you both share and have shared together tells me that you raised her as if she was your own. Even with the obvious differences, you still raised her unbiased as to her species, her origins. You raised her as your daughter, which only makes this entire ordeal so much worse. I absorbed her words, as well as the other ponies in the room. So I must say to you, dear sir, please do not hold my student accountable for this. It was never her, nor any pony else's intention to cause this much hurt to either of you. If you must blame some pony, I would ask that you blame me. I am the one that helped bring them here, to take Rainbow Dash back to our home. Away from here. I couldn't look away from any of them. My heavy breathing breaking down with sobs. My mind was just going on her own. And thinking back to all the things Dashie and I did together. I took deep breaths as I spoke. Just... How could I blame some pony for sending Rainbow Dash here? I sniffled, then cleared my throat as I continued. I nearly choked up as I searched for the words to express myself. These have been the best 15 years of my life. So if anything, I feel quite the opposite. I wish to thank you, Twilight, and the rest of you. Thank you for what you did, though not intentional. Thank you for all that came out of this. And finally, thank you for all of my years, my life, and my love with Dashie. I tried to smile at Twilight between the sobs, but she looked on the edge of tears herself and could only look away before she cried herself. Celestia then stood from the rug she laid on and walked over to me as I stood. No need for thanks, good sir. Instead, I wish to thank you for taking care of one of my little ponies. She would have never made it without someone much like yourself. Celestia closed her eyes and then leaned her horn towards me. I didn't move. I wasn't sure what was going on as she touched her horn to my head. I felt a sudden warmth rush through my body. She drew her horn away, still smiling as she stepped back. Thank you. Then another pony spoke up. Thank you, sir. Twilight added, finally able to speak through her tears. Thank you, Applejack said. Thank you, darling, for caring for our Rainbow Dash. Rarity spoke. Thank you, Fluttershy quietly said. Thanks, Pinkie Pie shouted as she sprung up to me and hugged me. I couldn't help but laugh a little from her extrinsic attitude. Better yet, the rumors on the internet were true. Her mane did smell like cotton candy. I remained silent as I nodded, then looked back to Dashie, who also wore a smile on her face. The ponies all returned to Dashie and Twilight as Twilight's horn began to glow once more. Are you ready now, Rainbow?
Twilight asked, returning to Dashie and starting her magic. She simply closed her eyes and awaited the inevitable. It seemed time slowed down as Twilight's horn approached Dashie's forehead. My mind began forcing random memories of us together. I can vividly remember the splashing of the bathtub from her bath times before she could shower herself. I can still taste her many failed attempts at baking and cooking in general. I still smell the outdoors from our times at the park where she was able to spread her wings. There were so many memories that I simply had to shut off my brain so that I could keep myself focused on Dashie. A single tear ran down her left cheek as I could see her eyes moving under her eyelids. Her mind was doing the same thing mine was, forcing our fondest memories all at once. Because this was going to be the last time we ever saw one another. Finally, Twilight's horn touched Dashie's forehead. There was a bright light, and when I could see again, they were all gone. All the ponies had disappeared. Through my tears, I sighed in relief. It felt wrong, but it also felt right. She was now the normal Rainbow Dash that belonged in Ponyville. I stood in the living room for several more minutes, just staring blankly at the empty floor that Dashie had been standing at just moments before. Then I looked around the room and took notice of my surroundings. I noticed things were different. Pictures that once held images of me and Dashie no longer hung from the walls. Many of the random personal items of hers that were scattered around the living room were gone. I was confused, so I ran up to her bedroom to look. When I opened the door, what I saw instead of her NASCAR and airshow posters mixed with her bed and other furnishings was a simple office. A cheap desk with a computer on it, and an ugly-looking potted plant. It took me some time to digest what I was experiencing before I realized what must have happened. It made sense, but it still stung me in the chest. And to make sure nothing happened between worlds, Celestia must have removed any existence of Dashie ever being here. Being with me. 15 years old down the drain as her existence was wiped from the planet. I felt as though all those years were for naught, wasted as I wouldn't be able to remember her. And yet my memories still lingered of her. I could remember everything as if it were still as vivid as when they happened. Then the thought clicked. She did something with her magic when she touched me with her horn. Did she protect my memories so that I would remember her? Had she done the same for Dashie? I walked back downstairs and into the living room while I thought. On the coffee table sat a book. I recognized it. It was my photo album. I sat down on my couch, opened it up to the first page. There was my mother and father with me shortly after I was born. I continued flipping through them, looking at my own past. There was a gap after my parents died, but to keep my mother's dream going, I had picked it back up, making false pictures of happy times and enjoying my life to stick into her book of memories. Then I opened up to a piece of paper. I picked it up and immediately recognized the handwriting, or more correct, mouth writing. I speculated that this is what she had written down before she left.
Dad, for 15 years you took care of me. For 15 years you loved me, played with me, and made sure I enjoyed my life in a world not meant to house me. I'm not a man of many words, but even though I told you this in person, I feel you needed a written version of it, so you'll know it was all real. I love you, Daddy. You helped shape me into the mare I am now. I'm not sure what's going to happen, if I will remember any of this or not, but I want you to know that you did a darn good job of raising me. Even if I was a bit stubborn at times or short with you during others. With Celestia's permission, I hope to allow you to keep our photos, our memories, with you so that you will never forget. Again, I love you, and thank you. Your little daughter always. Your little Dashie forever. Rainbow Dash.
I set the note back into the page, flattening it out with my hand as I felt the dried tear marks littering the paper. I read the note over and over again until I had it memorized. Then I turned the page and was greeted with Dashie's silly smile. So now I sit here, looking through my photo album of our time together. Her first words, her first drawing, even her first preened feather, all in this book of memories. Everything in the house is gone, but what I had put into this book still remains. I don't dare ever change that either. But I will continue to add to it, to show that those years with her helped not only shape herself, but helped shape me as well. I'm a new man from what I was 15 years ago. Changed. Given another chance by a sheer miracle of fortunate events that transpired from somewhere I can't even speculate. If I had never gone back and checked that box, if I had done something different than I had, it could have changed everything between us. I guess I'm lucky that it all worked out. I can gladly say I have achieved my parents' only wish, for me to be happy. Though I'm saddened, I'm still happy for the time I had with her. I now sit alone in this empty house, staring at my mother's rainbow picture with a smile plastered on my face. Every time I see it, I think of Dashie. I should be crying. I should feel horrible and want nothing but my daughter back. And yet, I feel relieved to know that everything is all right. She didn't run away or leave on bad terms. She's gone, home to where she belongs, and she's safe. I look back down to my photo album, turning to the page of our most recent photo. The pages are blank. I still have a lot of life ahead of me, and I plan to make the best of it. For myself. For my little Dashie. The end.